Alright, guys, so we're going to continue with our story, Henry Jekyll's Letter. This is our next chapter. We are actually going to finish our novella, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, this week. So, in order to get started, let's look at this picture that we see first. Now, it says underneath this picture, the caption says, Dr. Jekyll looked at himself and his changed appearance, and he enjoyed his wickedness. So, wickedness, I want you to go ahead and take a moment and guess, in the Edpuzzle video, what do you think the word wickedness means? Okay, so now that we've thought about maybe what the word wickedness means, do the men here, the man here, and then the men and the man in the mirror look different from each other? I want you to answer that question. And if so, how do they look different? All right, so now that we've kind of previewed our chapter, let's go ahead and get started with our reading. Remember that if you are answering a short answer question, you have to write in full sentences and pay careful attention to punctuation and grammar in order to get your full points. All right, so let's get started. I, Henry Jekyll, was born in the year 18, and then he doesn't finish, to a large fortune. This, among other things, led to encourage me to prepare for a life of honor and duty. I worked very hard at my studies, but as I grew older, I found that I had a certain gaiety of spirit. Gradually, I became torn between these two parts of myself. One part was hard-working and patient, the other was light-hearted. The second is the part of which I was ashamed, and so I hid this side of myself. Because of the two parts of my life, I grew to believe that each person has two natures, one good and one bad. My scientific studies led me to an amazing discovery. I learned that certain drugs had the power to separate these two natures. One night I mixed the drugs and drank them. At first I felt pain and terror, but then my mood changed, and I gradually began to feel younger and happier. I felt free to do anything, and I felt myself to be more wicked than I had ever been before. But that was not all. My wickedness delighted me. When I looked in the mirror, I saw for the first time the appearance of Edward Hyde. It seemed that the wickedness had changed the form of my body. Since that side of myself was less developed, my body had grown smaller. Sometimes I even had a limp. Upon my face was a mark of hardness. I noticed that anyone who came near me stepped back in terror. I believe this was because all people are both good and bad, but I alone was all bad. Encouraged by my first experiments, I was eager to try again. I often grew tired of my life and studies. I now found it too easy to take one drop of a drink of the drug and drop the body of the respected Dr. Jekyll. I made a life for Hyde. I told my servants to expect him and to allow him to come and go as he pleased. I even took another house for him in a less respected part of London. Then I asked you to draw up that will to which you so strongly objected. As Henry Jekyll, I often became horrified by the acts of Edward Hyde, but when I fell into this mood, I would tell myself it was Hyde, not Jekyll, who was guilty. Of course, matters did not improve. After the scene with the child, Hyde began acting in a worse manner. Then one morning I awoke feeling very strange. Something inside me kept insisting that I was not in my room in the square. I kept returning to sleep and awakening again, when my eyes fell upon my hand. I saw that it was not large and firm like Henry Jekyll's, but it was small and thick, with a growth of hair like Edward Hyde's. I rushed to the mirror, and what I saw turned my blood to ice. Yes, I had gone to bed Henry Jekyll, and awakened Edward Hyde. A feeling of terror rose within me, but I told myself to be patient. I got dressed, and I went to the laboratory, and I drank my mixture and came out to breakfast 10 minutes later as Henry Jekyll. I began to think more seriously about my double life. It seemed that the body of Edward Hyde had lately grown taller and stronger. There was no limp or sign of weakness. The bad part of me seemed to be taking over. Once in my early experiments, the drug had failed. Since then, I had been forced to take twice the amount of drugs and throw off Henry Jekyll. Now it was Hyde that I could not be rid of. I was slowly losing hold of my better side, and I was becoming my second and worst self. Between these two sides, I now felt I had to choose. To choose Jackal meant that I would have to give up all those habits I secretly enjoyed. To choose Hyde would mean giving up my work and friends and becoming a hated man. I decided in favor of Jackal. I would say goodbye to the freedom and secret enjoyments of Hyde. How honest I was in this choice, I do not know. I did not give up Hyde's house or throw away the drugs, and Hyde's clothes lay ready in my closet. But for the next 2 months my life improved. I worked hard and enjoyed the company of my friends. It was only gradually that I began to feel Hyde inside me calling for freedom. Then one night, in a moment of weakness, I again drank the mixture. The evil that had been locked up for so long came out raging. The first person I met on the street woke the bad spirit in me. The man did nothing to spark my anger, yet I took delight in every blow I struck. My want of evil satisfied, I ran to my other house and destroyed my papers.